Some of you might find this question tricky, but regardless of whether you can solve it or not on your own, you'll be excited to learn the solution to this real-life assessment test question. Here's the question. What can you visualize upon merging both rectangles? You're presented with two 7x6 rectangles on the left, and you have four possible choices. Choice A, number. Choice B, shape. Choice C, graph. Choice D, letter. Give yourself 10 to 20 seconds to see if you can come up with the answer on your own. Do you see the answer? Let's continue to see how we can solve this challenge and come up with the correct solution together. As you might be well aware, tests are not designed to be solved easily, so you should look out for tricky items as well, and that's what we see here, specifically shaded parts in the corners. They're not part of the end figure, and they are designed to confuse you. But upon combining both rectangles, you can see that you formed a 3, and 3 is the number. So the correct choice here is choice A, number. And you can visualize 3 at the bottom rectangle. I'm going to trace it here so you can see it. And these are the confusing items right in the corners. So make sure to watch out for those as well. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. Some of you might find this question tricky, but regardless of whether you can solve it or not on your own, you will be excited to learn the solution to this real-life assessment test question. Here's the question. Determine which object is missing in the sequence. And you're presented with the sequence of 5 objects, and object number 4 is missing. You also have 4 different choices to choose from for the missing object. Choices A, B, C, and D. Each object contains triangles as well as stars. Do you recognize the pattern? Do you see the answer? Give yourself 10 to 15 seconds, maybe pause this video to see if you can come up with the solution on your own. Did you figure out the answer? Let's continue to see how we can solve and get to the correct solution together. I'm probably going to repeat myself again, but my advice to you is always look for patterns. So there are 2 patterns present here, and both patterns have number of objects. The first pattern is pattern of number of stars in the box. You see that the first box has 3 stars, then it goes down to 2 stars, then 3 stars again, 2, so the next one is 3 again. So the missing object will definitely have 2 stars. There is also a pattern of decreasing triangles, and you see that the number of triangles is decreasing in every square in sequence after being shown twice. For example, object number 1 has 3 triangles. Object number 2 also has 3 triangles. Next object has 2 triangles. So following this pattern, the missing object will also have 2 triangles. And then the last one will have 1 triangle. This is why the missing square contains only 2 stars and 2 triangles in no specific position. So the correct answer here is choice D. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. Let me share with you a tricky question which tests your pattern recognition as well as analytical skills. Which of the following squares comes next in the sequence? And you're presented with the sequence of 5 squares, and the 5th square is missing. And you have 4 different choices to choose from: A, B, C, and D. Do you recognize the pattern in this question? Do you think you know the answer? Give yourself 10 to 15 seconds to look closely and see if you can recognize which shape should be selected out of the 4 choices presented. Did you figure out the solution? Let's continue to see how we can get to the correct answer and solve this challenge together. As usual, my recommendation to you is always look for patterns. And let me share with you which patterns are present in this question. Obviously, there are multiple patterns present, because this is the type of questions you get in the test. The first pattern is where half circles rotates clockwise inside the square. So the first position is on the right, next position is at the bottom, then left, top, and then you see the cycle repeating. The second pattern is where L shape is located at the opposite direction of where it was in the previous square. So you see that the L shape in the first square is located in the bottom left. In the next square, it's located in the upper right corner. And then the third pattern, also related to the L shape, is where L shape only changes its location after being in the same place twice, which is also being followed by the triangle. As you can see, the L shape in the first square is located in the bottom left corner. And then in the next two shapes, it's located in the upper right, and then in the upper right again. Then it changes the position and goes into the bottom right. And then in the next two positions, according to the pattern, would be upper left and then upper left again. And then the last but not least pattern is the pattern of the small triangle. And small triangle here follows the pattern of being inside and outside of the L shape. Therefore, this is why the next item in the sequence should contain a half circle in the lower part of the square and then the L shape, which is similar with the previous shape and the triangle inside. So the correct answer is choice C. Hopefully you understand what to look for in the similar questions in the test. Let me share with you a tricky question which tests your pattern recognition, reasoning, as well as analytical skills. Which of the following squares comes next in the sequence? You're presented with the sequence of 6 squares, and square number 6 is missing, and you need to pick it up out of 4 different choices. Choice A, B, C, and D. As always, my recommendation is look for patterns. You can pause this video for 10 to 15 seconds to see if you can come up with the solution. Did you figure out the answer? Let's continue to see how we can solve this challenge and get to the correct solution together. As always, my recommendation for you is look for patterns. And there are 2 key patterns present in these questions. One pattern is in the squares 1, 3, and 5. What we see here, we see an arrow which rotates, and this particular arrow rotates clockwise, specifically the core of it arrow. So the first one is in the upper left corner, then in square number 3, it moves into the upper right corner, and then in square number 5, it moves to the bottom right corner. Then we have completely different pattern of squares 2, 4, and 6, which was missing. And this particular pattern is double-sided arrow rotates 90 degrees, which you can see here presented. Here it's completely horizontal, here it's completely vertical, so in square number 6 it will be horizontal again. And then another thing that happens here, the corner of the square rotates counterclockwise, and it goes from the bottom left corner to bottom right corner, so the next position for that corner would be upper right corner. So the correct answer here is choice C. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems in the test. Over the years, I built a checklist of what to do during the assessment day. Let's look at this checklist to see if it might be helpful for you as well. A lot of people, including myself, feel very anxious on the test day. Even though sometimes anxiety might be helpful to keep you on track in your preparation and make sure you deliver on your goals and commitments, during the test it is detrimental to have an anxiety. You need to be as relaxed as possible and calm down with all your worries. The best way to do it is to get a good night's sleep before the test day, as well as eat very good breakfast to make sure you have positive energy flowing through your body. Very frequently, you have an opportunity to complete the test from home. Even though it might be a good idea, it's very important to understand that you need to find a comfortable place where you will avoid the distractions. I heard the cases when people were locking themselves in the closet or in the bathroom just to make sure that they don't have any noises or interruptions and can fully concentrate during the test. Any distractions might be extremely detrimental, and it's very important to find a quiet place inside your house. I recommend that you find a comfortable and quiet place wherever you're planning to take the test, to make sure that disturbances or distractions don't have any impact on your test score. A lot of providers share with you specific written instructions or introductory video on how to complete the test. It is very, very important for you to carefully read them, watch the video, and understand. If you're unsure what to do during the test, make sure to ask and contact your administrator before starting the assessment. A lot of test providers and administrators allow notepad and calculator. Please make sure to check what's allowed in your particular situation, and you probably can do it ahead of time. And once you know, make sure you bring these items into the test room. And last but not least, a lot of times there is a practice before the test. This is something that provider or administrator allows you to do just to make sure that your equipment operates as expected. Make sure you do this and don't miss this option before starting your test. Here is the question from the real test, but somehow I have a feeling that you might come up with the answer. What can you visualize by merging both squares? You're presented with 5 by 5 squares on the left, and you have 4 different choices to answer this question. Choice A, shape. Choice B, letter. choice C, number, and choice D, chart. Do you see the answer? Give yourself 10 to 15 seconds. Maybe pause this video to see if you can come up with the answer on your own. Did you figure out the solution? Let's see how we can solve this challenge and get to the correct solution together. Before jumping to the solution, let me give you a couple tips. If you have access, please use the paper or whiteboard to draw this shape and see what can you come up in the final figure. This is necessary because our brain, at least mine, is not very well designed to visualize particular figures. So maybe you are different, or maybe you know better solutions. In this case, if you have ability to visualize, you're very lucky, because most of the people don't have this ability. They should be using paper or whiteboard to get to the certain answer. Another tip here is look out for trick parts that might be included into the final shape upon merging, and they're created by test providers to confuse you. As you can see, upon merging both squares on the top, you see the final square at the bottom, and you see that there is a square in the middle, as well as two shaded small squares in the upper left corner and in the bottom right corner. So the correct answer here is choice A, shape, because square is the shape. But make sure to use those tips I shared with you earlier to increase your chances of answering these types of questions correctly on the test. Let me share with you a tricky question from the test. I have confidence, though, that you might figure out the answer. Here's the question. Which of the following figures comes next in this sequence? And you're presented with the sequence of 5 figures, and figure number 5 is missing. You have 4 different choices to choose from. Choices A, B, C, and D. Do you see the answer? Give yourself 10 to 15 seconds to see if you can come up with the solution on your own. Did you figure out the answer? Let's continue to see how we can solve this challenge and get to the correct solution together. As you're probably well aware, there is always a solution to any challenge. And to figure out the solution for this particular problem, you need to look for patterns. There are 3 patterns present here in this particular question. Pattern number 1 is that smaller inside square is only present in every other box. So if you look at the squares 1, 3, and 5, they do not have the smaller inside box, and squares 2 and 4 do have it. There is a second pattern here as well. The color of the bigger square depends on the color of the smaller inside square present in the previous figure. So even though there is no small square in the figure number 1, you can take an imaginary square, and this is what will drive the color of the square number 2. Then there is a small square in the figure number 2, and you take the black color of this square, and this is what will drive the color of the square 3, and so on and so forth. The pattern number 3 is the pattern of straight lines, and you see that on the background there is a straight line here, and the straight line is present in every figure. If you look closely, you will see that the straight line rotates clockwise. So, based on this information, you can see that the next square should only contain solid blue square without inside square and straight line following the sequence. This leads us to correct answer for this particular question, being the choice A. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. And now I have a question you can try to solve on your own. Here's the question. Which of the following fits the most in this sequence? You're presented with the sequence of objects. The first object has 3 squares with different shapes inside. Second object also has 3 squares with different shapes inside, but 2 of the squares are missing, and this is what you would need to figure out. There is also a third group of squares which is present here in the question. You have 4 different choices. Choices A, B, C, and D. Do you see the missing items? Give yourself 10 to 15 seconds to see if you can come up with the solution on your own. Maybe pause this video to see if you can come up with the answer. Did you figure out the answer? Please post it in the comment section of this video, as well as your rationale on how you solved it. This would allow me to give you my feedback. I'm also planning to post a detailed answer in my future videos, so make sure to subscribe and review my latest videos on the topic to learn about the answer and how to come up with the answers to similar questions on the test. Thanks for participating in this challenge, and good luck solving it. Here's the tricky question from the real test, but somehow I have a feeling that you might come up with the answer. What is depicted upon combining the shaded parts of the given figure. And you have two rectangles with circles inside presented on the left. Each rectangle contains different circles. Some of them are white and some of them are filled with black. And you have four possible choices. Choice A, letter. Choice B, chart. Choice C, number. And choice D, shape. Can you visualize the answer? Give yourself 5 to 10 seconds to see if you can come up with the answer. Did you figure out the answer? Let's continue to see how we can get to the correct solution together. As you can see, upon combining two rectangles, M can be formed, and M is the letter. The trick here is that typically during the test, you don't even have access to the paper, and you can't depict it on the paper, or potentially using any other tools. So you have to visualize this in your memory, and that's the tricky part about this question. It seems easy once you know the answer, but the trick here is that you need to do it in your head. So what I did, and maybe it will work for you as well, I used the left rectangle as a base, and then I moved mentally some of the black dots from the right rectangle into the left rectangle to see which shape could be formed. And that's how I came up with the answer M. If you have a better way of solving this, please share in the comment section of this video. Alright, this question is very interesting and tricky, and you might frequently see these types of questions on the test. But in this case, I'm going to show you the solution, and I truly hope that upon learning, you would know how to solve these questions in the test. Here's the question. The rectangle has shaded and unshaded parts. What type of figure can you visualize when you merge two rectangles? You have two rectangles on the left. They have shaded and unshaded parts, represented by white circles and black circles. And you have four possible choices. Choice A, graph. Choice B, chart. Choice C, shape. And choice D, number. Do you think you know the answer? Let's continue. Please give yourself 10 to 15 seconds to see if you can come up with the solution on your own. Did you figure out the answer? Let's continue to see how we can solve this question and get to the correct solution together. What you see here is that upon combining, you can imagine the hexagon, because hexagon is the shape in the bottom rectangle. And because hexagon is the shape, the correct answer here is choice C. The trick here is try to visualize it in your head, which is quite hard. But in case you have access to papers or whiteboard, try to take advantage of this and maybe verify your answer using those tools. Let's recap. By combining unshaded parts of both figures, a hexagon can be visualized, and hexagon is the shape. So the correct answer here is choice C. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. Let's look at the very interesting question you might frequently see on the test. Which of the following squares comes next in the sequence? You're presented with 4 squares. Each square contains a circle inside, and circle has 4 quarters. In 2 of the quarters are different objects. You see triangle and you see another circle, much smaller circle. You have triangles and circles as well as quarter sections located in the different positions, and you need to determine which object comes next in the sequence. You're presented with 4 different choices, A, B, C, and D. But first, you need to understand the pattern. Do you see the pattern? Please give yourself 10 to 15 seconds to see if you can come up with the solution. Did you figure out the answer? Let's continue to see how we can get to the correct solution and solve this challenge together. As usually, my recommendation is always look for patterns. I know sometimes it's hard to see those patterns, but you still should continue and keep looking. In this particular case, we're dealing with the pattern of hourly increments, and we determine the hour based on where the triangle is pointing. So if you look at the first square, triangle is pointing to 6 o'clock. Then the next square, triangle is pointing at 11 o'clock. And 11 o'clock is 5-hour increment from 6 o'clock position. Now, next square, triangle is pointing at noon or midnight, whatever pattern you follow, or 12 o'clock. So we're dealing with 1-hour increment, which means that in the next shape, we will go back to 5-hour increment, which will bring us to 5 o'clock position. So the correct answer is choice D. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. And now I have a question for you. I have full confidence that you can solve this question in less than 15 seconds. Here's the question. Which of the following completes the figure? You're presented with the figure on the left, and one square is missing. The square was the question mark. You have 4 different choices to choose from. Choices A, B, C, and D. Give yourself 10 to 15 seconds to see if you can come up with the answer on your own. Did you figure out the answer? Please make sure to post the answer as well as your rationale in the comment section of this video so I can give you my feedback. I'm also planning to post a detailed answer in my future videos, so make sure to subscribe and review my latest videos on the topic to learn more about the answer and how to come up with the answers to similar questions on the test. Thanks for participating and good luck! Let me share with you a tricky question which tests your pattern recognition as well as logical reasoning skills. Which of the following comes next in the sequence? And you're presented with rectangle, which has multiple squares, and one of the squares is missing. It has a question mark inside. And you have 4 different choices, A, B, C, and D. Take a close look to see if you can come up with the answer. Now might be a good time to pause this video to see if you can come up with the solution on your own. Did you figure out the answer? Let's continue to see how we can get to the correct solution together. There are a couple tricky parts about this question. Number 1 is the general flow of squares, and then there is a sequence of arrows inside the squares. For example, we're starting the flow right here, not in the corner. It's kind of in the middle of the upper row, and then you need to follow the red arrows for the general order. The arrows inside the squares rotating clockwise, and what you can see is the arrowhead for that smaller arrow always points to where it was located in the previous box. So the correct answer here is choice A. I truly hope that you've nailed this question and got to the correct answer on your own. But in case you need more questions or practice problems, please make sure to check out my ebook in the description section of this video. Let me share with you a tricky question which tests your reasoning, analytical, as well as visualization skills. Which of the following completes the missing part? And you're presented with 2x2 box. One of the square in the big box is missing. And you have 4 different choices to choose from, A, B, C, and D. Take a closer look and see if you recognize the pattern. Do you think you know the answer? Now might be a good time to pause this video to see if you can come up with the solution on your own. Give yourself 10 or 20 seconds to see if you can come up with the answer. Did you come up with the answer? Let's continue to see how we can solve this challenge together. Tricky question, isn't it? But as usually, all tricky questions always have the answers. So take a look here. There are 4 shapes inside the square, and each shape has a unique color. Shapes stay in place. The only thing that changes is the black color for the shape. And what you can see is that the pattern of the black colors inside the squares, and it rotates counterclockwise. So, as usual, always look for patterns. You see that the flow among the shapes starts in the upper left corner and flow goes clockwise. But the rotation of the black color inside the squares goes counterclockwise. So, that's the tricky part of the question. But there's always the right answer. And as you can see, the right answer here is choice D. Let's recap. Always look for patterns. In this case, there are 4 shapes, and each shape has a unique color. Color black rotates inside the square, but same shapes stay in their original position, and the rotation inside the squares is done counterclockwise. So hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. Let me share with you an interesting question which tests your reasoning skills. Determine which of the following is missing, and you're presented with the large square which could be logically broken into 3x3 small squares and 4 different choices. Choice A, B, C, and D. You have a missing square in the bottom left corner. Do you think you can figure out the answer? Now might be a good time to pause this video and give yourself 10 to 20 seconds to see if you can figure out the solution. Do you have the answer? Let's continue to see how we can solve this puzzle and get to the correct solution together. We're presented with the very interesting challenge here, but challenge could be broken down into 2 patterns. The first pattern is the flow of small squares around the middle, and the second pattern is the flow of triangles inside the small squares. Pattern 1 rotates clockwise and starts in the upper left corner. You see that the pattern rotates around the cent clock, which is in the middle, and cent clock does not participate in the pattern. And pattern 2 is determined based on where a triangle touches the lines of the small square. For example, the triangle in the upper left corner touches the lines of the small square in the center you see on the top, as well as down at the bottom. Next one touches on the left and down. The following one touches in the up and also in the center. And you can continue this pattern to determine the missing item, which is choice B. It was a tricky question, but I hope by now you know what to look for and how to answer similar problems on the test. But in case you need more questions or practice problems, please make sure to check out my ebook in the description section of this video. And now, here's the question from the test you can try to solve on your own. I have full confidence, though, that you can solve this challenge and find out the answer. Which of the following figures comes next in the sequence? You're presented with the line of figures, groups of 3 squares, grouped in sections 1, 2, and 3. In the section 3, 2 squares are missing, and this is something that you would need to determine out of the 4 presented choices, A, B, C, and D. Do you see the answer? Maybe give yourself 10 to 15 seconds to see if you can come up with the answer on your own. Did you figure out the solution? If you figured out the answer, feel free to post it in the comment section of this video, and I'll give you my feedback. Make sure to post your rationale as well. This would allow me to comment on how well you solved this challenge and whether your rationale determines correct patterns presented in the question. I'm also planning to post a detailed answer to this question in my future videos, so make sure to subscribe and review my latest videos on the topic to learn about the answer and how to come up with the answers to similar questions on the test. Thanks for participating in this challenge, and good luck solving it. Let's look at the interesting question which tests your pattern recognition skills. Determine the missing shapes inside the figure to complete the sequence. And you're presented with 2 by 2 figure. It has 2 missing shapes, and you have 4 possible choices, A, B, C, and D. Do you see the answer? Now might be a good time to pause this video and give yourself 10 to 20 seconds to see if you can come up with the solution on your own. Did you figure out the solution? Let's continue to see how we can solve this challenge together. As usual, to solve these types of problems on the test, you need to look for patterns. And there are 2 patterns here presented. Number 1 is the diamond pattern in the middle. And number 2 is the pattern of shapes on the outside of the smaller squares, which are unique. Outside shapes corners are always aligned with the corner of the smaller square as well. The 2 missing shapes also have similarities with other shapes present in the box. Upon combining, all triangles in the center form a diamond shape. Let's look at each one of these 2 patterns in more details. You should look for the triangle which matches the color, and upon combining, it should build a diamond. For pattern 2, the missing shape in the upper right corner should complement the shapes with the corners that can be exactly placed in the box. In this case, we selected green rectangle. You also notice that there is a pattern of green color on the opposite side of the squares, same as the purple colors on the opposite sides of other squares. So the correct answer here is choice D. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar questions in the test. Let me share with you a tricky question from the test. Somehow, though, I have confidence that you might figure out the answer. Here's the question. Which of the following completes the missing part of the square? And you have 3 by 3 square, which consists of the smaller squares. Each small square has a star, and all stars are in the different corners. 1 small square is missing, and you have 4 different choices to figure out the final answer. Choices A, B, C, and D. Each choice has a star in a different corner. Do you think you know the answer? Give yourself 10 to 20 seconds to see if you can come up with the answer on your own. Did you figure out the answer? Let's go ahead and jump straight to the solution. As usual, the best advice I can give you is always look for patterns. So there are multiple patterns going on. Let's look at each one of them. The first pattern is that the top and the bottom rows follow the similar patterns. You see the location of the stars. For the top row, they are in the top, and for the bottom row, the stars are at the bottom part of the bottom row. If you follow the middle row, you will see that the stars in the middle row follow a completely different pattern. The first middle row star is at the top, then bottom, then the next one logically would be at the top again. You also see that the middle row stars are placed on the opposite sides of the top and bottom row stars. You see in the first column the middle row stars in the upper right corner versus the top and the bottom rows, which are placed on the left side. Same thing happens in the middle column, and then assuming that we figured out the pattern, you will see that the same pattern will be applicable in the right column as well. This is why the missing star is placed on the opposite side of the stars in the top and bottom rows. Let's recap. Always look for patterns. The stars inside the box follow the pattern. Top and bottom row follow similar patterns, and pattern in the middle row is very different. Notice that the first row and the last row, stars are placed in the upper and left sections. Middle row stars, though, are positioned on the opposite side of the stars placed in other rows. Middle row stars also follow a pattern of upper, lower, and then upper. Therefore, the missing star is placed on the opposite side of the star in the first and last row at the upper left corner. So the correct choice here is choice D. Hopefully you've nailed this question, and in case you didn't, you know how to answer similar problems on the test. Here's the tricky question from the real test, but somehow I have a feeling that you might come up with the answer on your own. Which of the following is formed when the shaded parts of the blocks are combined? And you have 4 different choices. Choice A, number. Choice B, shape. Choice C, letter. And choice D, chart. On the left, you're presented with 2 blocks. There are 2 4x5 blocks, and each block has white and shaded circles. See if you can come up with the answer and determine what happens when all these blocks are combined. Give yourself 10 to 20 seconds to see if you can come up with the solution on your own. Did you figure out the answer? Let's continue to see if we can solve this challenge together. The best way to solve these types of questions is to imagine a new block and understand what is formed when all the shaded circles are merged together from 2 original blocks. And upon merging, you will see that the heart is formed, which is represented here in the 3rd block. And heart is a shape, so the correct answer here is choice B, shape. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. Let's look at the tricky question, which tests your knowledge of reasoning as well as the math skills. Here's the question. By analyzing the figure using a mathematical operation, how many stars should be present in the missing part of the circle? And you have a circle broken down into 4 equal parts. 3 parts of the circle already have stars, and they have 1, 2, and then 3 stars. And you have 4 different choices. Choice A, 2, choice B, 3, choice C, 4, and choice D, 5. So can you determine how many stars should blank part of the circle have? Give yourself 10 to 20 seconds to see if you can come up with the answer on your own. Did you figure out the answer? Let's continue to see if we can come up with the solution together. As usual, to answer any type of question, look for patterns. And here the pattern is symmetricity. So if you draw the line in the middle of the circle from top to bottom, you will see that you need to come up with the answer that would be symmetrical. There are multiple ways to solve this challenge, and we got a hint that we should use mathematical operation. We take the star from the left of the blank part of the square and add number of stars from the right part of the blank square, and we get 1 plus 2, which is equal 3. You can also use subtraction to come up with the answer. Can you figure out how to use subtraction to get to the similar answer? If you figure out the subtraction answer, please make sure to post it in the comment section of this video. Let me share with you a tricky question from the test. I have confidence, though, that you might figure out the answer. Here's the question. What figure can be visualized upon combining the two rectangles? And you have two rectangles on the left. Both of the rectangles are 7 by 3, and you have 4 different choices. Choice A, graph. Choice B, shape. Choice C, letter. And choice D, number. Do you see the answer? See if you can pause this video for 10 to 15 seconds to give yourself some time to figure out the answer. Did you figure out the solution? Let's continue to see how we can get to the correct answer together. Let me explain to you how you can come up with the solution on your own. Upon merging of two rectangles, you can see that 8 can be visualized, and 8 is the number. So the correct answer is choice D, number. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. Let me share with you a tricky question which tests your pattern recognition and visual reasoning skills. Which of the following completes missing parts of the square? And you're presented with the 4 by 4 square, which contains different smaller squares inside, and 4 possible choices. Choice A, B, C, and D. Do you recognize the pattern? Now might be a good time to pause this video and give yourself 10 to 20 seconds to see if you can come up with the answer. Did you figure out the answer? Let's continue to see how we can solve this challenge together. Interesting question, isn't it? But as usual, look for patterns. If you look closely, you will see that the middle box right in the center of the larger square is symmetrical. So the L shape at the bottom and then another shape in the upper right corner, they represent symmetricity for this middle square, which consists of the 4 small squares. Couple important considerations when answering this question. 2 white boxes designed to confuse you. Lower left part of the larger square only has 3 white spaces in the form of L shape. Similar symmetrical pattern follows in the upper right corner. This is why the missing part consists of the shaded part, which completes the square in the center. So the correct answer here is choice A. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. Thanks for watching. I encourage you to check out our daily question challenge in the community section of this channel. I also recommend that you check downloads in the description section of this video. Please also check out resources page on our website, howtoanalyzedata.net/resources. If you like the content, please give this video a big thumbs up. This tells us that you need more content like this. I would encourage you to share this video with other people that might be looking for the job. This will help them to get prepared and pass assessment test faster. Please consider subscribing and following this channel. We have a community of great people helping each other to get ready and pass the test. Please leave questions, comments, or suggestions in the comment section of this video. And all the best on your interview and assessment test. Thanks for watching.